We're live worship and live pastor at all 5 services. How do we make that still feel authentic? How do we make it feel fresh every single time? We're coming in with a mindset of excellence, but there's so much grace because this isn't heart surgery here. No one's going to die.
Well, I'm here with Daniel from Church on the Move. This is their Broken Arrow campus, which is kind of satellite campus. The main campus seats several thousand people. This room seats about 500. And he just let me hear what it sounds like in here, and it's very comparable to what it sounds like with their huge PA at the main campus, which hats off to you, man. It sounds awesome in here. So we're going to talk about that. He's going to give us his tips on how he's got such an incredible sound here. And it always starts at the source. Why don't you just tell us what you've done up here to make sure you're getting great sound from the beginning of the signal chain all the way back there?
Yeah, so obviously we're in a pretty small room. So the only real live volume that we have from stage is drums, but obviously we've mitigated a little bit of that with some shielding and everything. For me, a band sound is gonna be kind of rounded out by the way that we mix our drums. So we start with a great drum kit. It's got a good, nice punchy low end sound. We really like the Roberts stuff. Have used them at all 3 of our campuses, and he's done really great work for us. Cymbal selection is really important, making sure that we have stuff that's not too bright, that's not going to make it sound over the top and loud and shrill inside the room, because we found, being a drummer as well, we make sure that the sounds that we're producing are not going to overshadow vocals, which is going to be really the most important piece of what we're doing in worship. I don't have just a ton of money necessarily just in the miking, but what we do have is really intentionally bought some Old Faithful stuff. I mean, an SM57 gets the job done a lot of the times. We're using a bass rig right now with a Sansamp, and that has been set up and tuned by one of our primary bass players over at Tulsa. His name's Jordan Landers. He's an incredible player. And what he did is he came out here and actually shaped and molded that sound for our room. Very nice. And tried to make sure that when we're listening through the PA, it's not just some plugin that you buy off a website, that it's actually tailored to the room a little bit. We have a house bass that we use, this Lakeland bass that I think is done really well. It's able to kind of produce a wide variety of sounds, but then we also can use just a straight up, jazz bass or something in here that sounds pretty good on the same rig.
So does that bass guitar just stay in the room?
Yeah, this is a house guitar. You'll see we have a whole boat kind of full of guitars and stuff that we use that are all house. We help make sure that what we're providing is quality on the front end. And not everyone is able to come in with maybe a higher end guitar rig or setup like that. And so if we're able to take some of that on the front end, we're able to provide people who maybe they're fantastic players, but they can come in and everything's pretty much ready to go for them. We've been able to dial in tones and sounds and everything. So we source everything and make it shaped to the room rather than having to fight the room and fight the instrumentation on the stage. One of the most important things in this that I think I should mention is the relationship with the worship pastor. That for me is maybe where all of this starts. More than even just this, that we're able to effectively communicate about what it is that he wants to be able to do and how I can help him to replicate the sound that he's trying to produce. We will talk specifically about how we want to build songs. The song I was showing you is a new one. We had sat down and talked about that on the front end and talked with each other about what that felt like we wanted it to be. It's going to be bright in the mid-range. We want to have some good lead over the top. I want to fill out the guitar too by making it sound pretty good and rock and roll. It's going to make it feel better in the room. But when we have that relationship where we're able to communicate effectively, then I'm going to have a much easier time. Instead of just trying to produce what I feel like this should be, we're going to come together and we're going to say, no, what do we want to produce?
What are some tips you could give people who say they don't have a good relationship between sound guy and worship leader because they've never taken time to build that relationship? Like, how can they get that going? Does anything come to mind?
I think you have to understand that there's a try in there somewhere. For me, it's about starting that, being adult or maybe mature enough to be able to come out front and have a direct conversation with that person, And if discipleship is the end goal of the journey, then we're going to come to commonality a lot quicker. If it's your product and if it's your thing that you're taking on, then you're not going to be able to come to that common ground. But if we can understand that there's a collective here, we're serving a community, we're serving a group of people. We're not here to be able to serve our own interests of what we're doing. But if we can come together and say, no, Jesus is the answer and Jesus is the reason, and we're going to point our arrow towards that, then surely we can come together and find commonality of what we're trying to produce there. So I can actually walk you guys through later maybe how we structure our volunteers, because I have 5 services on the weekend. And so Some of those positions are all services, are 5 services. So like myself, if I'm mixing a weekend, I'm mixing all 5 services plus rehearsal run through and a Thursday rehearsal. So I'm here quite a bit. Lighting is going to do every single one of those services. It's going to be the same guy for that whole deal. That's a volunteer position. The Saturday graphics person is going to do all the rehearsals and run-throughs and services. And then that Sunday person is going to get here at a 7 a.m. call time, and they're going to be here all the way till 2 p.m. And so some of those positions are built that way for consistency here. But what I have found the most effective way to be able to communicate with people, to be really honest, to be able to sell that is by casting vision. Putting it in front of them and helping, just being direct and upfront about what the commitment is. I'm not going to approach it from saying, hey, I need you to be here at 7. I'm sorry. No, I'm going to be here at 6. And so, man, it's awesome. You're going to get here at 7, and we're going to get to do a full run through. If you set clear expectations and communicate the goals of where we're going, we're going to do this so that we develop consistency, so that as we get through these services, they're going to have the same exact experience. We're live worship and live pastor at all 5 services. And so we're cranking that out, but how do we make that still feel authentic? How do we make it feel fresh every single time? And part of that is just the way that we communicate and cast vision and understanding of those positions. And so for me, volunteer structure is everything. Understanding how to communicate that vision up front so that that expectations are clear is everything with that. So,
you know, what I hear from you is it's really about the mindset of the leader.
That's right.
If the leader's thinking like, oh, I'm asking too much of my volunteers or like whatever, then they're going to feel that way.
Absolutely.
But if you have the mindset like you talked about, it's like we're all showing up early. Like we're doing this together. We're going after a common goal. Like, let's 100%. Do this. You're going to see a team who comes in and knows what they're there to do. And we have established as a church kind of culturally how that looks every single time. We're coming in with a mindset of excellence, but there's so much grace because this isn't heart surgery here. Right. No one's going to die. And I use that phrase with my people a lot just to relieve some of the pressure. Because the truth is it's church pro presenter. Like, it's okay that you space barred a little bit early. There's grace built within that. Because for me, if there's none of that grace on the front end, then how am I ever going to want to buy into this deal and feel like I've had success and walk away from this going, oh man, I'm thankful that I used my time, that I was valued here. And so we provide meals, we provide everything, free coffees. I've got all my volunteers know where to find my free coffee cards. They go under there and find those. And so it's important to us and for Jonathan and for the whole team for us to be generous with how we approach this because we know it is more commitment. And so if we can take care of the front end a little bit, make them feel welcome, make them feel like they can't make a mistake that we can't fix here. Like, there's so much grace with that. And I think our people feel that way. So, All right, I guess we better get back to this tech
we should
side
do
of
like
things.
Tech side of stuff.
All right, so we left at the keyboard.
So
those tones are like
those are
tailored to this room.
All tailored to the room. So
same with guitar?
Most of the guitar stuff. Now, we're really fortunate to be able to have some unbelievably talented guitar players. So with the guitar stuff, Eric and I, who's the worship pastor, have some high trust with a lot of our guys. They know what we're looking for. Most of them have played either here or Life Church or someplace around here that they're familiar with learning a part and trying to replicate the part. And so they know how to get to those places. Sometimes, so some guys have fractal systems, some guys have like the Kemper stuff. Some people like different things. We provide the Kemper modelers here and the pedals necessary to be able to create the sound. We have all the tools necessary to be able to make it happen in-house. And really what we found is for development, because we have a lot of young players too, providing them with a couple pieces of good equipment and making sure that we can help them with their sound on the front end helps their development tremendously to get to a better place. The keyboards are especially shaped, especially keys 1 and keys 2 rigs. That fills out a really significant chunk of the mix in the room. And I would recommend, especially for small rooms, look at how you're utilizing your keyboard sounds because guitars are nice and they do fill in quite a bit of space, but I really think a lot of the fullness can come from your rhythm section, from drums, bass, and keyboards. And that's kind of where I build my mix out of a lot of times. And so doing what you can with what you have is really important. And sometimes I think people can just add 1 or 2 little things that make a tremendous difference. So,
agreed.
Do
you guys use tracks in conjunction with
we do, we try not to let the tracks be the driving thing, and so a lot of what we're adding is some choir, some strings, maybe some shakers, a tambourine, percussive sounds that we might not have live in person, but most of what we're using that for is filler. We're just trying to fill in some of the gaps and just use it as kind of texture, but it also obviously helps with, there's a guide track on it, and so the band stays much tighter. There's clicks, there's everything that we're doing there, and I cannot recommend having your worship team play to a click track enough. I mean, there's just no other way to be able to manage the band as well as just being able to be on the same page like that. So.
Agreed. I want to go back to the drums real quick. You know, we talked about that way at first. Because there's always an argument about shielding the drums versus not shielding the drums. And you have your drums shielded. And they have a roof on them too. I don't see any sound absorption. I guess it's coming out of the back here. Is it getting absorbed by these curtains?
The curtains are unbelievably helpful. We started out in the room with just a front shield, just to try to help shield just some of the direct volume. What we found quickly is just through the metal ceiling and everything, it shot right up, and it was unbelievably loud, but it wasn't even just that. It was what we had to do to the mix to be able to get vocals on top, what we had to do to get guitars and everything on top of that. And the sound itself was just kind of spilling out in this kind of small room in a way that was uncontrolled. I'm doing a similar trick to what Jonathan's doing by using gated, triggered gates. And so I'm able to get those thresholds on those gates really dialed into a place to where most of my drum sounds are very isolated, and then I have, like I said, the cymbal selection is huge. And so I'm able to kind of take kind of a live sound, and because we're close miking everything, you'll see I don't have overheads. There's almost no point in having an overhead in this.
So you're close miking all of your cymbals?
Every single cymbal, and I switch out what mics I use for those every once in a while. I've had some DPA stuff on there, some Sennheiser stuff. To be honest, it's cymbals, and so I like to just change sounds out, just kind of depending on what I'm feeling. But my drum mic package mostly stays the same. So
why the plexi roof instead of like a sound absorbing roof on this thing? Because a lot of people put like the padded roof thing on there. Any reason specific to that?
So for me, there was a twofold reason. One is very practical, which is that we owned this and it was already here. And
use what you have, right?
And the second, for me, I don't know that I would come back in and do anything different at this point. I have not noticed it. If you're just standing in there while someone's playing, it's going to feel really crazy and chaotic. But because we're close miking everything, the sound that I get out here is pretty nice and isolated and packaged pretty well. And so for me, it's not adding or taking away a ton. Obviously, cymbal volume does get a little bit out of control, and I do have to watch kind of how my drummers play with their cymbals quite a bit. The fortunate side is that I'm able to kind of coach them on how to be able to hit the cymbals less while also keeping up the energy and power and momentum from the drums. And so for us, we've found kind of a nice balance so far of being able to make it work. The other thing is the look. I just don't like the look of like the padded roofs, and it doesn't let any light in. And so now what I'm really able to do, you can see I've got some lighting kind of above the shield. And so because it's clear, I'm able to utilize that light on this really pretty white kit and like use some different light looks to be able to make it look a little bit better. I've got some backlighting coming through. If I had a bunch of sound absorption, it would disable me from being able to have some of those as an option unless I really close lit everything within here. And for a room this size, it's just not necessary.
All right, so now we're backstage. So show us what's in your rack here.
So this is where basically all of my control is living out of right now. Mostly audio gear, as you can see. I can start kind of over here. So I have a couple of different Novastar processors that are actually processing the two different sizes of LED walls I have. This one is processing my outside LED walls. This is processing my kind of triple wide center screen and everything. I have a couple of lighting nodes. We really like these Luminexes. They're very stable and they help us to be able to split off our universes just well. Everything is networked, so we have a network switch, and then I have a few video and audio tie lines that take me from front of house back to here, just in case I need to add any extra video content, another TV, something up here that I need to do. If I need to run a handheld camera for the stage, we do baptisms in the room, and so I'll run a close camera and I'll tie into those video tie lines. Super convenient to have.
Yeah, very nice.
Obviously, we have the two SSL stage boxes that are bringing in all of the audio sourcing. And then on this side, I have my wireless rack. So those are my in-ears on top. We just installed a brand new set of the new Sennheiser digital, the 6000 series stuff. It's super clean, very, very crispy. I'm super happy with it. It's been awesome.
So you can tell a difference.
A huge difference. Wow. I mean, JB was here with me on one of the first weeks we ran it, and we were just sitting back in the room shocked at just how much more vocal clarity and presence I got just by changing the transmitters. The capsules all stayed the same.
Wow.
All identical capsules. I transferred those over to the new mics, and we immediately found so much more clarity out of them just from going to a digital platform. So it was unbelievable.
Do you mess with the wireless infrastructure yourself, or does somebody come out and get all that?
So we have an unbelievable relationship with a company in town called Mike Reynolds, a guy named Steven Aruda. You're probably familiar with them. They do incredible work, and we manage most of our stuff on the back end, but they're so good whenever we buy stuff, and they're like this for everybody, that they will come and they help us set it up, really dial it in. They have some tools that I don't have on hand to really do a spectrum analyzer and make sure that like we're fitting in those frequencies. I'm in a really busy part of the city right here. I mean, you walk out the doors right here. I'm in the middle of a really kind of a really busy part of town. So there's a significant amount of wireless just floating throughout here. There's a couple radio stations nearby. I've got some news station towers. I mean, when we pull up our spectrum, it's really clouded with stuff. So we had to come in, and they were really helpful in making sure that we picked the right frequency spectrum and then that we put it in the right place.
That's one of those areas that's like bringing the experts for that, because there's a lot of churches who have wireless issues. And they're trying to solve them themselves. Yes. I mean, there's just a whole set of knowledge that you need behind understanding all that.
It's almost a different world. I don't think people realize how different it is from being an audio engineer who maybe you have a great ear and maybe you understand the console and mixing, but my level of expertise is not necessarily in the wireless spectrum. I am not above or afraid of being able to phone a friend and call for help. Sure. I'm not going to be able to know everything about all of it. Yeah. But I try to know what I can about what I do. And so that's kind of where I land with it. But
Pro tip right there. Some experts are just worth the money.
It's not as expensive as you think to have someone come in and design the systems that need to be designed that way. Sure. It's not, you're going to save a lot of money on grief really on the back end. If you're going out and you're just kind of going to Guitar Center and trying to buy your wireless systems, you're going to have a really hard time. Yep. So I would say even at the small level, there's certain areas where I would still encourage someone to use and utilize an integrator for those things rather than trying to take it all on yourself.
Yep, for sure. Good stuff.
There's a couple more pieces. I do want to talk about the QSC, the QSIS stuff. I do have a patch sheet that we always keep back here for stuff, just so that when we're in a hurry, we have a reference point. But then the QSC, QSIS, and the QCore systems is what is really managing and all of my audio processing throughout the whole campus. Okay. So I'm able to break out stuff. I'm able to utilize different zonings, and I have some different presets on some panels that I'm able to use for if I have a rehearsal, but people are in the lobby and I need music being able to flow out there, I have that flow going through the QSIS to be able to utilize that stuff so that I'm mixing a live service in the room, but it's not going out to my lobby speakers and everything. So I have some control over that through that. And then obviously we have the L-Acoustics amplifiers that have their onboard DSP, and everything that we did for PA and system tuning is done right at the amplifier, which is really exciting. We're doing most of our lighting and LED wall through a power distro. We have power distribution. Yeah. If you have the luxury of being able to come in and do fresh electrical for when you're building a building or doing your building, and you have the availability to be able to do a company switch, a switch to be able to actually put like a larger amount of power distribution on there, it saves you so much time on the back end with your lighting systems and your video systems and everything else. If you have something that has the ability to have SOCO breakouts and have a lot of different circuits, be able to do lighting fixtures at 208 volts or 120 volts, being able to switch back and forth between that stuff is a really pivotal thing that we're able to do. So that way too, when we do any kind of set changes or bring in like a special for Christmas or something like that, I've got power ready to go right here. I've got a couple SOCOs and breakouts that I can roll out, and it's super easy for me to be able to get that in there. Have some places that you have some room to grow, because whenever you design something that has a ceiling on it immediately, it's going to be really challenging if you decide to take it in a new direction and try to add something and you not have the availability. Having to bring in a transformer on the back end and tie in a new leg of power is not fun, and I've had to do that before. So yeah, don't recommend that. So having a power distribution system is really important and really helpful. So now we're back on stage. We have just a little bit of an access space back here. Obviously, having not a very big room, we didn't have a lot of room to play with, but we certainly...
Some's better than
Yeah,
none.
some's better than none. And then here's our kind of band green room, and also where we keep our infamous wireless cabinet, the Chico Special.
Yeah.
He designed this product.
Looks familiar.
Yeah, a number of years ago, we utilize it the exact same way to be able to keep mics and packs organized, be able to help band with their ears. You know, if they have custom molds, that we keep those here, and so I'm able to put those out for whoever's playing that week.
Yeah.
And then we have some generic ears that we keep on hand just to make sure that everyone's covered and everyone's taken care of. Because if we're asking you to come in and we're only utilizing in-ear packs, no wedges whatsoever, then we feel like it's on our shoulders a little bit to make sure that you have everything you need to be able to make that happen.
Yeah,
So.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I love the thread of generosity throughout everything we've been talking about today.
Yeah,
it's like you're here to, yes, the volunteers are here to serve, but we as leaders are here to serve the volunteers.
Absolutely.
So we recently started 2 services at our church. And,
Yeah.
and they're back to back. And so what we do for people who serve both services is we feed them lunch in between, because we have time for that.
Yep.
Every Sunday we feed them lunch.
We do Saturday dinner in between those services. We cater everything back here in our offices, and then Sunday mornings we do breakfast. It's 3 services with a 7 a.m. call time, and so, man, that's a long time if you're not eating any food in that in that region. So
take care of your volunteers.
Food goes a long way.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about PA.
Yeah.
I see you have line arrays going to the ceiling. I see a sub up there. Are there any subs in the floor? Give us the floor.
Yeah, there are. There's actually these. There are 4 underneath each side. I'll kind of move this out so you can see how that looks.
What are those? What size?
Those are, JB, help me. They're 12s, right?
Yeah, they're the 21s.
Yeah, the KS21 sub. So they
Dual 12s?
Yeah,
Yeah?
dual 12. So I have 4 dual 12s on each side underneath the stage. The PA is built interesting, and we can kind of talk about this a little bit, but this is the L-Acoustics A10. So it's a single 10-inch driver in these, and so what we did to try to get some more low end out of it, those subs that are up there are actually tied into my left-right. And so what that's kind of doing is making the PA more full range. When we spec'd the room initially, we had thought about doing an A15, which is another one of the L-Acoustics line that has a little bit bigger driver in it. But then when we saw the rendering of how big that system was, it was going to basically hit our guitar player almost in the head. And so we decided to tighten up the box, and by getting a little bit more low end, we were able to utilize that sub in a left-right configuration. So I have my floor sub split off on a different matrix, but then I have a left-right that's feeding this to make this more full range. So that's what's happening right now.
Interesting.
We built it so that the boxes will go down pretty low. They'll go down about 100, but the range of what they produce at 100 is not as full as maybe what you want.
Yeah.
So those subs are really picking up that, like, maybe not necessarily the low stuff like what's happening down here on the floor, but it's able to pick up that low mid range in the like 60 to maybe like 250. And so I think about 250 is where I'm going to stop hearing stuff out of that top sub. It does mean that I have to be careful a little bit with vocal mics because some of those can process through those. So I'm high passing a little bit higher than maybe I usually would to be able to mitigate that a little bit. But certainly nothing crazy. But what it does do is help me with, like, bass guitar has a lot more presence because I'm able to push it in the PA without having to bring up just the floor sub level a ton. Because what we notice pretty quickly is there's a delicate balance in the room of actually having too much bass in this tight little space. But then it was interesting because it can fall off pretty quickly as well. So there's a really kind of delicate balance that we have all played with. We played with for a number of months with just like how much level in the sub, how much level more in the PA. Keys 2, has a really nice full range sound. So that's going to be coming through that sub a little bit as well. Maybe not as much on the floor because we're not trying to build out, just rumbling bottom end, but certainly we were trying to make sure that the range of the instruments is being represented well in the PA. And since we have kind of a smaller package, that's what we decided was going to be the best fit to be able to help that. And I certainly think it does. So
very nice. Yeah. I like that solution.
Yeah, it was an elegant little way of being able to do that. So.
Yeah, awesome. And I don't see any floor wedges, but like the main campus, I know they have some monitors in the ceiling.
I do as well.
Do you as well?
Yeah, I also have a small little center fill. Because of the kind of spread of this and how close we knew that we were going to get some of these seats, we did do a center fill for this. So that little guy is covering about these first 2 rows is really all he's doing. And he has kind of a wide spread on that. I do have one of our just a box up there. I use that pretty rarely, to be honest, because of our low ceiling height. I already have a little bit of a headroom struggle with, especially like headset mics and like podium mics and stuff like that, like condensers that are a little bit more susceptible to feedback and everything. So I do have to be careful how much content I do put in there, because you can quickly let some of that gain structure get away from you if you put a ton of like VIP content or MC mics or whatever in that wedge. So we'll utilize it sometimes for like if we have a memorial service or something else that we're kind of doing where someone's not using ears, maybe we'll put some acoustic guitar in there for if we're doing a little bit of acoustic worship for a prayer service or something like that. So it's kind of a flexible wedge that we can use for a couple different things.
So a normal Sunday, is there nothing?
Almost nothing in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's there in case you need it.
I might pump just a tiny bit of like altar keys for the pastor at the end, but rarely, I would say, even that we utilize that. But it's available, and that's kind of what we wanted to be able to do, is have something that if we needed to not use any inner packs, we had a solution for being able to hear a little bit of fold back on stage. So
yeah. For sure. All right, so here we are at the mixer. Yep. You told us everything that you do at the stage. So you already have a great sound coming in before you even get here.
Yep.
But tell us a little bit about the mixer that you're using here.
Yeah, so I'm on the Solid State Logic. Church on the Move is across the platform, Solid State Logic. Yep. And so that's what we're using for all of our front of house setups right now. I'm on the L200. This is what we've had since we were a portable system. And so this guy has lived with me for quite some time. He's been very reliable. We've done plenty of work on it. But I grew up on an M7. That was like my first console that I used 20 years ago. And so I was really used to having my VCAs in that kind of central logic mixing position. So I kind of build mine. I would say it's pretty preferential, but we do a few things really uniform across the campus. Most of us have some sort of a main or VIP page where we have all of our, VIP like MCs, pastors mic, music, video playback, just the basics, kind of grit of everything in a central place all the time. I like to keep those over here so that we utilize an A2 in our services, an actual other person who's going to come and help make sure my record feeds are rolling, making sure that everything's going, and then they're going to help me mix my VIP content a little bit. And so I keep a lot of that content over here just for that reason. I have my band vocals on my right hand because that's just a function of how I've been used to. And then what I do is I page through my instruments over here. So on this tile, I've got a layer of drums, and then I move over and I've got a layer of guitars, and then I have a layer of keys, and then a layer of tracks, and then I have some of my like CG stuff, and then my effects page over here that I can manage some of that content from there. On every page, what's lovely about these consoles is that you can set up custom layers and do pretty much whatever you want to do with it. So I'm able to have a VIP page on every single one of my tiles so that if I'm on a bunch of different stuff for some reason, I can always reach over here and grab a mic or something that I need to be able to grab quickly. So that's just kind of a fail-safe that I have built in. But for me, I use this as the main portion of where I'm mixing my instruments. I'm mixing mostly from my VCAs here in the middle a little bit. Most of the time managing just kind of master volumes a little bit, and then I can reach over quickly and grab this. And I always have just my workflow. I've always liked to have just those vocals. I've got a hand on the vocals, kind of a hand to be able to go between VCAs and instruments, and it's just a comfortable workflow for what I have.
Show us how you're processing the lead vocal channel.
This is our worship pastor, Eric. This is his channel strip. So what's great is you'll see on the SSL, I'm not using anything outboard right now. So everything that I'm doing is on board, and everything that I have plug-in wise is all built into the console. I'm not doing any external wave stuff right now, and I don't have any outboard gear at the moment. This is just all built in on console. So I have my channel strip set up and ready to go. I have just a little bit of compression on that vocal. I take a page out of some other, how I approach that a little bit from some different people. And then I have a little bit of a de-esser on each of those vocals on an insert. And then we do the dynamic EQ, which really, I talked a little bit about that earlier. I try to utilize that dynamic EQ to try to minimize how much phasing I'm introducing into my vocal channels. Obviously, whenever we start doing and grabbing a lot of EQ, you're going to start changing how that actually comes in a little bit. So, we're mixing at a little bit louder of a volume. So especially on vocals, I've got to make sure I have enough in there to be able to get over the top without it sounding too harsh or too bright and too brash. And so that dynamic EQ comes in really clutch, because what I can do is when those vocals get really loud and really present, I can take out some of that harshness just in that frequency spectrum, rather than having to do something that takes it out of that mic channel the entire time that it's running, essentially. So sometimes those dynamic presets are only just taking out what I need out of the top end, rather than like really changing or manipulating the sound to it a lot. So what most people would think of as EQ is this. This is my parametric EQ. So this is going to be a real standard. I have a 4-band EQ here with a high pass and a low pass available on it. That's available on most consoles. If you have a Behringer X32, you're going to be utilizing the same exact thing. This EQ, though, what you're doing is you're taking out permanent frequencies out of there. You're pulling out stuff out of the mic channel. You're actually taking it out in whatever place you have. You can see what's beautiful about this console is I can actually change around the ordering of how I'm processing my vocal chain. And so what I can do is I can change around this order depending on how I want that to hit. So my inserts are actually hitting on the front end of my chain and not on the back end of my chain. So those dynamic EQs are really what's shaping. So the dynamic EQs only get activated whenever there's a frequency hitting what you've selected. So like right here on Eric's vocal, on this particular one, some of his lower register, I have to scoop out a significant amount of 200, but I don't want that to go away all the time, especially if he's up in his register. I want that presence to come back a little bit. Maybe he gets more up in his head voice whenever he gets loud, but when he's in a low register, maybe he's using some more of this. That's gonna take and just scoop out a little bit of that gradually whenever I'm mixing him. Rather than, instead of me doing something here where I'm taking my high pass and cranking it all the way up and taking it permanently out, it's able to take it out when it's necessary, but then when it's not there, it's leaving that presence in. And so that's kind of one of the main differences.
So could you also call it a multi-band compressor? Is it similar?
It's similar.
Yes. What's the difference between those two? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, to be honest, in this particular application, not a lot different. It's technically, it is doing some multi-band compression. I'm sure there's a really good technical explanation. This is the particular plugin that I was shown on this console early on. Yep. And my ear liked it. And that's all I know how to tell you, is that I was able to take stuff and really tweak and fine tune what I was pulling out of those frequency spectrums. And so what's great about this, you do have a threshold and you have a little bit of a ratio. I can adjust how much attack I have on that, and you can kind of really control it similarly to how you would control a multi-band compressor, where maybe you have a really steep amount of cut out of something that's a really prominent thing, but then another thing I just have maybe just kissing the top of something. So like maybe up here and like cut something that's a little bit more harsh, I'm not quite taking a harsh ratio. I have a 2.5 ratio out of that. So it's just barely kind of pulling out the top end of that 2K as he gets into kind of the nasaliness of the top end of his vocal. So it's not being activated in any, like a verse, it's not being activated. He's singing that verse without any of that hitting. But if we're hitting a massive bridge of a song and he's really powering through, you're gonna start to see some of that top end stuff come in and start working. And that's kind of what I have across the board. Here's one of our female vocals, and really none of this stuff almost gets activated until she's loud. Until she's very, very, very loud. And then what you'll see is these start to actually do their job, which is to take some of the sharpness, maybe some of the nasaliness out of it, and allow that to come through naturally, rather than compressing the whole channel down and making it to where you have a really big amount. I'm not a big compression guy. You'll find I'm not doing a whole lot with like compressor tricks as far as like trying to change the output gain ratio, but compressing the front end a lot. I feel like that's unnatural for me. My ear prefers a little bit more open, organic sound. And so I'm really trying to do as minimal amount as I can to change what source I'm getting, because the source is so good. And so for me, we have some beautiful singers. We have fantastic players who come in and they're prepared, and that's exciting because I'm able to take it and do what I do with this and just replicate what they're trying to give me in the best way possible. So I'm trying to do as minimal amount as I can to change or manipulate that and make it come through really naturally. But this tool helps me so that I'm not just murdering people's ears, on the top end.
What's kind of like the one trick that you have up your sleeve that you want all the other audio guys to know about?
Yeah. So, I'm a drummer. And so I put a lot of focus into my drum mix. We already talked about sourcing. So for me, like getting a good drum sound on the front end is really key. I tune my drum kit. We change out the heads pretty frequently. I make sure that it's going to give me what I want to get out of it. And so when drummers walk in, it's ready to go. I think Jonathan talked about this at his, but I use a parallel compression trick on a kind of a bus setup, a bus compression, to be able to make our drums sound just a lot more full. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking my dry stuff, which is kick, toms, and snare, and I'm feeding that into two different stems. I have a dry stem that it's basically feeding straight through. So this acts as kind of my first point of master volume. This is a stem group that I'm using. All of those are separately coming through parallel through this bus right here, which we're calling a distressor bus. Again, that term comes from the actual physical distressors, like what we use at Tulsa. I'm not using an outboard piece of gear. I'm kind of using something that's modeling something that does that. And for us, what I found is a plugin that SSL makes called the Blitzer. And so this bus is taking all of that same stuff and it's bringing it in here. And when I'm fully up and running, it's giving me a whole lot of gain reduction out of that. I'm smashing it on the input side. And then what I'm getting on the output side, I'm adding some transients, a little bit of top end, whole lot of compression. But when you bring those up in parallel, kind of as you saw earlier, it just takes the drum sound and adds so much more bottom end, adds some really nice top end. So that can be done just about on any console in a different variety of ways. I think even the Behringer has a pretty decent compressor that you could kind of use to smash in. You would have to do some tricks to be able to do it. It would take a little bit of manipulation, but I think that that's one of my favorite tricks that we do, and that's all on board here. It's not something that I have to add a piece of gear to be able to achieve. And so that drum sound, I feel like, is really key to the Church on the Move sound. Being able to do some of that parallel compression, bringing that our lead pastor uses the word bombastic. He likes to use the word bombastic drums, very big sounding drums. It's something that we're known for. And so I want to make sure that I'm translating that here. And so that's one of the best tools that I have. And then all of that is feeding my overall drum VCA. So basically I have 3 points that I'm able to mix both volume and fullness of the drums to be able to access more sound out of it. So
by stem, could you translate that on a X32? That would be like a bus.
It'd be a bus. Yeah, you would use it just like you would a vocal reverb or a vocal delay or something like that. Or if you're using a de-esser, I know that the racks are a little bit more limited, so you would have to allocate an entire rack to being able to do something like that. But you could process it through another auxiliary and use it in a really similar fashion.
So none of your individual drum channels, like the kick drum, it's not going straight to the PA. It's going to the two different stems first.
And in fact, it's not even really assigned to the left-right output. So none of those are even being sent to that. What I am doing to achieve this is sending it at unity to both the dry and distressed bus. Gotcha. So that's being sent in parallel at the exact same level. On the distressor bus, I'm bringing a little bit more input gain on the plug-in, so I'm punching in on the front end just a little bit more, just to get a little bit more grit and dirt out of it. But then what I'm doing is I'm sending kick, snare, and toms essentially to those buses, and that's the way. And then once it hits that, it's coming back in through this distressor, and then that is actually being sent out to the PA from there. But that is still being routed through the drum VCA. And so I still have ultimate control over that volume on the VCA.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Now I see you have a RTA for the room up
Yes.
there, just like the main campus. But
Absolutely.
I don't see the curve that do you have like a curve that you're aiming for, like at the main campus?
So what you probably saw would only be, it would be produced. I have a blue line. That's not happening because I'm not sending out anything. I have a control coming from the console. Gotcha. So I would be able to see the discrepancy between what my room mic is picking up and what my console is seeing. That's what I have going on a little bit. Now, I don't have like a set curve for the room, if that's what you're talking about.
I remember that being at the main campus is like the Andrew Stone curve on the screen that everybody's aiming for.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm not necessarily going for that. This room is definitely not that room. And so what we're going for is achieving the best Church on the Move sound that we can within this context. So I have an SPL that I'm looking for in the room. And then I'm looking at the peaks and valleys more as what's happening if I'm hearing something sharp, if I'm hearing something build up in the low mids.
Where is that?
Yeah, where is that? We're going to try to find those things quickly. And obviously using that to be able to monitor and manage our volume levels as we go throughout the day.
Where is that?
That's Smart. Yeah, version 8. Yeah.
I wish that we could show you what Daniel's mix sounds like, but obviously you're not there in person and they don't have a live stream that we can link to either. But the Tulsa campus does have some worship videos posted on their YouTube channel, and that will give you a really good idea of what the Church on the Move mix sounds like as a whole. So I'll be sure to leave a link to one of those. Shout out to Jonathan. He would have been the one that mixed that video. And we did a tech tour with him at the Tulsa campus, so be sure to check that out at the link in the description as well. All right, let's get back to it. All right, so give us just a brief rundown of how you guys do lighting.
Yeah, so we're working on a MA on PC. We're running MA3, most current version right now, and then I've got just a little kind of, I think they call this the command wing or something like that. It's just a small playback surface. So basically this is just a playback surface. The software is running off a rack-mounted PC that we use over here. There's a couple of DMX nodes back in the back that's splitting up. I think we're running 4 universes of DMX right now.
Oh, okay.
I think I have up to 8 available right now, but I'm only utilizing 4 at the moment.
How do you guys like do designs from week to week? Is it completely different design every week?
Yeah, so we have someone come in and we have rehearsals on Thursdays, and so we bounce out tracks and attaching them to planning center, and then we have a contractor come in and build and design our weekend. And so that person will come in. They should be here any minute actually today, and they'll come in and actually design and build the show, kind of a package almost ready to go. Our operators on the weekend will come in, make some tweaks to front lighting, make sure that the transitions look good, maybe adjust some timing just depending on how the service is flowing, and then run the play, go plus for the rest of the day. And so we try to make it to where it's super volunteer friendly. So we spend a little bit of time on the front end making sure that it's ready to go for whoever is going to be running it. Now, that person is the same person who's operating for the whole weekend to develop that consistency. So that's a big deal to us, obviously. But it's basically 100% built out whenever they walk in, and they can come in and just make a few tweaks and be good to go from there. We don't do a lot of over the top. You'll see we have a lot of wash fixtures. I have no profiles in here right now. And so that's intentional, just to be able to get good, bright, rich color. It's less about the show factor and more about just a rich, beautiful look to be able to complement our worship.
Yeah, so, for sure. Yeah. And you guys are running haze, correct?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did DC Pro design the look on the stage?
Yep. They we partner with them. They're who we also lease our lighting packages through. And so most of my fixtures, the ellipsoidals I own, and but everything else that's like an LED or moving light on stage is part of the lease package. And that's just there to be able to help us with repair and maintenance stuff. And so we bring in these packages so that we can also have support on the back end from those guys. And so they came in, they did the design, and then they helped us do the integration of everything. And that partnership is instrumental to how we run lighting really at the church.
So what was your input to DC Pro to land on this look?
Yeah, so Jonathan and I worked really closely with them, and what we did is we kind of took a rendering of the space. We knew that we wanted to incorporate what we call our IMAG LED walls. We knew that we wanted to have those out on the wings. We use, there's nothing on it right now, but we use those for lyric content. That's where our message graphics are going to go. So scripture slides go to the outside. And we knew that we wanted to kind of utilize this big center LED wall as part of the visual package here. So that's really, to me, was part of the design of our lighting package, is having that wall that we could utilize for graphic content. Our design team is unbelievable with some of our like message series art that they do. We did a series in Joseph not that long ago, and there was, I mean, it looked like something that you'd see in a museum. It was a beautiful piece of art on the background that we utilized for that whole service, and it always makes it look really great in photos and obviously like video content. As long as we're able to help with some of the striping and some of those issues, it makes for a really good visual. It makes for some depth of field. We're able to see some separation for the pastor rather than him kind of disappearing into a black background. So for us, there was a couple of like kind of key components that we knew that we wanted, and then we gave them a little bit of the creative freedom to kind of design something around those components. And then we went back and forth, passed it through our pastor and make sure that it was something that he felt comfortable with, and then we integrated it and we landed somewhere.
As far as like graphic design and stuff, like what you put up on behind the pastor during the sermon, do you guys share a team with the main campus, or you have your own team? Okay.
Yeah, Church on the Move is just super brilliant with how we do support teams. So IT, production, and creative teams all have a central support team that helps support the multi-site. That's really important to us, to be able to have teams around everywhere that is all with one vision, one goal. Certainly our campuses have some autonomy, and certainly our campuses have a way and a culture that we do some things with. We're going to be in different communities, but there's continuity built throughout it if the production team is centralized and if we're able to be on the same page together. Our graphics and our media support team is all part of a central support team, but they'll come out to our services and they'll look at what we're doing and how we're presenting it and try to work with us on developing whatever graphics package that they're doing for the sermon series at Tulsa, and developing it to be able to fit what we're doing here. And so they'll design what we would call like a triple wide, I guess, because really it's about the same size as if you did like a 3 projector kind of span. And so that's why I tend to call it that. But essentially they'll come in and design graphics that are tuned instead of a traditional 16:9 for everything else they're building, that look good on a big screen like that. That is an interesting format. So
cool.
Yeah.
Hey, if you want to see how Church on the Move does things at their much larger Tulsa campus, then be sure to check out the link on your screen.